On to Aspergillus and Mucor. These are the next set of organisms. So when we talk about Aspergillus or we talk about Aspergillosis, first thing that I'll want to tell you is there are different types of Aspergillosis, right? So you must have heard of something called allergic bronchopulmonary aspergillosis, something known as disseminated or otomycosis. So there are 4 types. Let's start. When I say ABPA, what is ABPA? ABPA stands for allergic. So there is an element of allergy involved. Allergic bronchopulmonary aspergillosis. Allergic bronchopulmonary aspergillosis. That is how you come down to the short form ABPA. Firstly, as soon as I mention something has an allergy, which hypersensitivity am I trying to hint you towards? With allergy, I try to hint you towards type 1. So please remember, this is a combination actually. It is a combination of type 1 and type 3 hypersensitivity reactions. That is point number 1. Point number 2 is that why is this patient having this condition? Because whenever there is repeated and heavy exposure of the spores, see, allergy always happens after repeated exposure. If there is a repeated and a heavy exposure to the spores, that is when this condition is going to happen. That is one thing. So ABPA, very common question asked, and examiner is quite smart. He doesn't write the word ABPA. He will write something like, he'll rearrange the words. He will say bronchopulmonary allergy. So the word Aspergillus has been removed. So even if ABP is mentioned, you should know it's a part of ABPA. Okay. Having said that, the next variety of Aspergillus is going to be Aspergilloma. As soon as I start using the word oma, we start thinking of tumors, right? So this is nothing to do with the tumor. It's just to tell you that there is a well circumscribed lesion. Just a tumor hota hai, well circumscribed like that. So if you see in the lungs, there is actually a well circumscribed lesion over here. You know what is this? This is nothing but Aspergillus, which will grow in a pre-existing cavity. In a pre-existing cavity. What do I mean by that? Let me give you some examples. For example, I say I have a patient who already pre-existing, who already has a cavity in the lung. Why would someone have a cavity in the lung? So let's draw it out. Why would someone have a cavity in the lung? Either he's had some secondary TB. Secondary TB leads to cavities. Let's make quick causes list of cavities in the lung. Secondary TB will have cavity. Then even, histoplasma can result in cavities. TB and histoplasma anyway have to come together. That's our rule, right? Next, which cancer can result in cavities? Squamous cell carcinoma can result in cavity. What else? Bronchiectasis. Bronchiectasis is also going to result in cavities. So imagine any of these diseases. Actually, cavities have a long list, but what I have mentioned over here is what you will find in all your PYQs. Either they will say there is a case of TB or histoplasma, or they will say there's a bronchiectasis, or they'll say there's a cancer called SCC. Now, having said that, cavity is already there. Who goes and sits inside that cavity? Aspergillus goes and sits inside that cavity. So that is Aspergilloma. So remember, does Aspergillus cause the cavity? No. Does Aspergillus go and sit inside a cavity? Yes. Coming to the next, disseminated one. So because it's going everywhere in the body, you will call it invasive aspergillosis. Easy to learn. The last one is superficial. Superficial includes otomycosis, means involvement of the ear. And yes, this is one of the Aspergillus fungal growths that you can see when you put the, when you viewed the canal, the ear canal, you saw the growth, fungal growth happening. So superficial is going to include otomycosis. Now, having said that, let's take a sample from here. Let's look at it under microscope, and then let's look at it under your, under the different culture media also. So when I talk about this, and that is Aspergillus, first I'll tell you the mnemonic. That is how, everything is going to become a little simple. When I talk about Aspergillus, please remember, A is going to be for acute angle dichotomous branching. There is acute angle dichotomous branching. And what do I mean by that acute angle dichotomous branching? So acute angle less than 45 degrees. So you can see wherever the branching is occurring, it's occurring at a less than 45 degree point. So look at it in the real picture. See, the branching is less than 45, here less than 45, here also less than 45. So number one, I've understood what is acute angle. Acute word is done. What is dichotomous? Like the branches of a tree. See, from one there are two. From 2, there are again 4. From 4, there are 8. From 8, there will be 16. This concept is known as dichotomous branching. 1 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 8, double, double, double. That is how we go. So number 1, A for acute angle, dichotomous branching. And number 2, SPE will mean that it has the presence of septate hyphae. It is going to have the presence of septate hyphae. So SPE for septate, because now you will realize that yeah, there are lines present. There are some lines present. Those are septations. Look at this one more picture over here at the bottom. We can zoom into it. So you will realize, look at the kind of branching. The kind of branching is all acute angle branching. And look how from 1 to 2, 2 to 4, how it's going all throughout dichotomous branching. Also, do you see lines? Yes. Can you see the lines or the septae inside it? Of course, this is a septate hyphae. Okay, so that is about how it's going to look like. Now you need to know how is it going to look like under the culture plates. So this is what you need to know for the culture plates. So first I'll tell you which are the 3 main Aspergillus that you have to know. This is Aspergillus fumigatus. Then we have Aspergillus flavus. Then we have Aspergillus niger. And there is also referred to as something known as, I'll come to another form, but that's a very rare one. So first we'll focus on this. When I'm talking about Aspergillus fumigatus, it shows you something known as smoky green colonies. I can see the green color, but it's a smoky green colony. Aspergillus flavus, some people call that it looks like a slice of kiwi fruit. So yes, we see the presence of yellow-green colonies. And Aspergillus niger is going to show you the blackish color colonies. And how do I learn all of that? Please remember that niger, see, niger word is anyway going to tell you that it is something to do with black. So this is the easiest to identify. The confusion actually comes between these two, fumigatus and flavus. So see, when we talk about smoke and fumes have to come together, right? Smoke and fumes. So smoky green is going to be the fumigatus one. Whereas yellow green, such beautiful colors, they remind me of a color of a flower. So flavus should be like flowery colors, yellow, green, beautiful colors. So flavus, flower, that is my mnemonic. Flavus, flower. So simple. In the exam, if I get confused, there is something called flavus, that is to do with flower. There is something called smoky, that is fumes. So fumigatus is to do with smoke. So that is fumes and smoke. And niger, of course, niger is, the word is only telling me something has to be brown, black. So that is what you are going to analyze, right? Okay, there's one culture plate that is remaining, which I'm going to come to in a while. But first, let me finish off these 3 main ones, that is Aspergillus fumigatus, flavus and niger. Now you want to look at these under the microscope. What stain will you put? If I want to pick up a little bit of this and look at it under the microscope for the culture morphology, you will put a lactophenol cotton blue. Before I show you, try to get a basic outline of what are you going to see over there. So please remember, you don't have to learn everything, just get oriented so that when you see, you should know that, yeah, this is somewhat like this. You can see a conidiophore. You can see this vesicle, this round little thing called vesicle. Then you have one row of something called medullae. You have one row of something called phyllides. And then you have one row of or 2 rows of conidia. So this is something of what you should be knowing. I'm not telling you to know everything, but now when I show you the different species, it's going to make a lot of sense. So when I talk about this, please remember, look at the first one. This is Aspergillus fumigatus. Firstly, why is it looking blue? Because what have I used? I have used something known as lactophenol cotton blue. Means what am I trying to see over here? I am trying to see the culture morphology. I hope that is simple for everyone. Having said that, what do we move on to next? Look at this. Can you see this vesicle? There is a conical vesicle and all those medullae and whatever we were talking about, medullae, conidia, they are all on top of it. But please remember one thing out here, that now comes the real deal. And if you solve this, most of your questions in your Q bank are solved. Where do you see the conidia and the medullae? Are they arising from all around or are they only arising from the upper part of the vesicle? So remember, the conidia are going to be present along the upper part of the vesicle. The conidia are going to be present along the upper part of the vesicle. How did I learn this? See guys, fumes kahan honge? Fumes and smoke always go up. So I will always see something which is only along the upper part because I consider these as fumes. So you will say they'll only be seen along the upper part. Versus look at the next one. Look at the flower, the flavus. Flower is going to be something that is going to have petals all around. So can you see the vesicle is going to have these conidia all around? That is the best way of learning it. So when you're dealing with Aspergillus fumigatus, fumes are only above, so the conidia are above. When you're dealing with Aspergillus flavus, it's like a flower, it's going to go all around. And when you're dealing with Aspergillus flavus is done, so this is actually a mixture. So you could see an element of flavus here because you could see something going all around. But what you're seeing here, this is quite characteristic. We see Aspergillus niger. Why did I call it niger? Because I can see a blackish color forming. So simple. If it's everything, it's flavus all around like a flower. And if it's only brown, then you call it Aspergillus niger. I hope that is clear with everyone. And yes, now coming back, we are left with one last and a rare one that you should be knowing. And this is the last one that you should be knowing regarding not this microscopic image, but definitely the culture media is needed. And what color are you seeing? You're seeing a classical beige color. You're seeing a classical beige color. So the last one, which is a little rare, but you should be knowing if you're aiming for the higher exams, and that is going to be something known as Aspergillus terreus. Now, what is this? Firstly, you can see the color that you're getting. It's a beige color. For those who don't know what is a beige color, I'm sure all of you have seen cinnamon. Yes, cinnamon you've seen, you've tasted cinnamon. Yes, cinnamon is also brownish. So it's a shade of basically a whitish brownish color. So how have I learnt it? So Aspergillus terreus tea. Cinnamon tea is very famous. All of those who are tea lovers, I give very few tea mnemonics. I usually give a lot of coffee references because I'm a coffee addict and a lover. But yeah, this is one of the tea references for all the chai lovers that we have. So cinnamon tea is something that most of the tea lovers really like. So yeah, cinnamon tea, terreus is going to look like tea. So cinnamon is the color that it has. But yeah, this is not very important. If you're aiming for higher exams, you should be knowing that this is the cinnamon tea, which is very resistant to azoles. It's not going to give a good response to azoles. Okay, having said that, coming to before we go on to the treatment, there is something about a toxin and a poisoning that I want to teach you about, which I have already taught you in the pathology lectures also. And that is aflatoxin. Let's break it. When I talk about aflatoxin, I've understood that it is a type of a toxin. When I've talked about A is obviously for Aspergillus. And which Aspergillus are we talking about? Flas. So we are talking about flavus. Aspergillus flavus releases a toxin called aflatoxin. And you know what this toxin does? This toxin can enter into our body and cause a mutation. It can cause a mutation at codon 249 of the P53 gene. What will happen because of that? Because of this, the patient can land up with hepatocellular carcinoma. So yes, aflatoxin has been linked with HCC. But now I understand that how would you must be making faces because you must be thinking, how will I learn codon 249 of P53? So remember the way you write P53, just fill in the blanks of the numbers that are missing, right? So you write a 2 over here because 3 is already written. Then you write a 4 over here because 5 is already written. And with this P, what can I do? Which number can I make? If I invert it, I get a 9. So what is the codon did I end up making? I ended up making 249. Now is there going to be any confusion about the codon? Because these are question examiners mean at times and writes 149, 248 and all of those. So you'll just write a P53. You'll write a P53 and you're going to fill up the numbers 2, 4 and 9. So codon 249 of P53 gene is what is mutated and that results in HCC. So obviously a question must be coming to your mind that a fungus can cause cancer. How does the fungus enter into our body? So remember aflatoxin or Aspergillus flavus is a very famous ground nut or a peanut contaminant. It is a ground nut or a peanut contaminant, and that should not stop you from eating peanuts or groundnuts because all us medicos, we have this habit of reading things and then applying it all to ourselves. But this is some long-term storage. If groundnuts and peanuts are stored for a very, very long time and that too in very moist and damp conditions, that is when fungal growth happens in them, and that is when if consumed it can cause this mutation. Having said that, what is the treatment aspect going to be? Remember, so depending on, whether there is an aspergilloma. So for example, if there is an aspergilloma or something that is growing in the cavity, you might need a surgical treatment. But a question that has become very, very famous is, what is the treatment for disseminated aspergillosis? And that is voriconazole. Very, very important. I hope you remember voriconazole was also used when there was Recently, it's a drug come up for chromoblastomycosis also. But yeah, disseminated for Aspergillus. Your disseminated aspergillosis, very famous question nowadays. Remember, when you go to your Q bank, you are going to find this. Okay, having said that, now coming to Aspergillus is done. So Aspergillus has a cousin brother family, and that is mucor. After COVID, you know the importance of mucor and the so-called black fungus, but mucor is not one organism. It belongs to a family known as Zygomycetes.